Okay, and we are live. I'm just going to let this breathe for a second, make sure the stream is stable, everything's looking good. Welcome in, everybody, to the Huddle Up podcast, presented as always by Mile High Huddle, powered by Overtime Media. I'm your host, Chad Jensen. With me, as always, my partner in crime. You know him, you love him. He is Zack Kelberman. Zack, the last we saw and talked to our listeners and our viewers, our live viewers here, we were basically passing the torch on the eve before John Elway and Vic Fangio were set to address the media at the Combine, their mandated pressers. A lot's happened, and there's so much to digest. I know Nick and Carl touched on a few things yesterday, but there's so much that you and I want to, basically break down. I don't know where to start, but I don't think there's a better place, Zack, than to kind of analyze Elway's comments about, he's arguably, Zack, his most effusive praise of Drew Lock has occurred these last 2 days. But at the same time, he leaves open the door, just a slim possibility. Listen, I don't think the Broncos are going to go after Tom Brady, Zack. But he left the door open by saying that the Broncos, we talked to Tom, but Drew's our guy. Your thoughts?
As I just told you 5 minutes ago, Chad, if even that, I don't even see the point in fanning that flame at all. Even making that comment, even in jest, even in the name of due diligence, why would you even open Pandora's box and associate yourself with Tom Brady and not just rule it out and put all your eggs in the Drew Lock basket? I know it's just Elway being Elway, and it's all an end game of some sort. It's all what you do in this business. But to even touch on Brady, to even let that creep into the Broncos orbit, and there's going to be stories now and narratives and headlines written about it. I don't like it, but I'm not going to read too much into it either.
He just, that's the thing is, I really don't think that there's any there, which is why it mystifies me that he says, we'll talk to him, but Drew's our guy. It's like, is it just simply Elway saying that out of respect for Tom Brady being a 6-time world champion and a Super Bowl MVP and a league MVP and showing the respect, whatever, kissing the ring, as it were, without completely reshaping the narrative? I don't know, dude, but it was completely unnecessary. And I might be inclined, Zack, to read more into Elway saying, we'll talk to Brady, if it weren't for his most effusive praise so far of Drew Lock. Now, I've been on record as saying that, his end of season press conference, John Elway kind of, he didn't communicate the support for Drew Lock being the guy as clearly as he possibly could have. He could have done a better job of eliminating any room for doubt that, no, look, Drew's our plan, Drew's our guy. We were pleased with what he did in 5 games, and we're going all in on Drew Lock. And, you don't have to go too crazy and too far out over the skis, but you could have got in front of it a lot better and more eloquently and directly than Elway did. But yesterday in a, as we've been there after the GM, the head coaches, they step up to the Combine, and anyone who has a credential there from the entire NFL world, national perspective, even local beat writers covering different teams, anyone who's there with a credential can ask Elway or ask Vic Fangio a question. But then what happens is, immediately following that time at the podium, which you all see, it's broadcast from all the team social media channels, and NFL Network runs it. What happens is they go off to the side. Elway will pull all the local beat writers, the actual faces he recognizes, the websites and publications that are covering his team every day, and holds another little mini court session, right, where, the local guys can ask a question. In that conversation, Zack, off to the side, I want to read to you a quote of what Elway said, which in my opinion is his most effusive praise of Drew Lock so far. He said, I thought talent-wise, this is Elway, quote, and this comes via Troy Rank of Denver 7, quote, I thought talent-wise he could make all the throws. He could adjust his arm angle and do all the different things. He's athletic enough to move around, make plays, and throw the ball on the run. Physically, I thought he was as good as anyone coming out last year. So he's talking about the pre-draft process. Now, the big question is always what's inside. That's the hardest part of the position, figuring that out. I think Drew's got that. So far, he's got that it factor. He's got the confidence to play the position, close quote. And then one more with Mike Kliss. Now, this was a one-on-one 9 News thing. He said, quote, he's a young guy that finished strong. We liked what we saw in him, liked how he handled things. He went into a situation that wasn't really a great situation and handled it very, very well. We think he's talented and think he can do it for a long time. Here's where I love it. Drew is our plan. He gave us all the feeling that he may be the guy who can compete here for a long time, close quote. So, Zach, I kind of, this is a little bit of a tangent, but if it weren't for Elway saying these things later on in the same day, I'd be a little bit more inclined to, put on the tinfoil hat about what he said, being willing to talk to Brady.
Elway also mentioned that he'd prefer to have a veteran quarterback behind Drew Lock. And even so, he thinks he's going to get Brady for a 2-year deal for veterans minimum. I don't understand the point of making that comment. I can understand, maybe not understand, but see the respect angle, even though the Broncos don't owe Brady anything, respect or otherwise. That's an opponent, that's a rival until he joins your team or if he joins your team. In terms of throwing his praise behind Drew Lock, Elway, it's all deserved, Chad. That's what you should be saying about your hopeful franchise quarterback who went 4-1 to close the season, and he's your most promising quarterback since Peyton Manning hung up his cleats. That's just what you say to build the confidence around that guy. Like we've been trying to urge the Broncos to do the last, month and a half or so. We have to support him, not just on the field, not just blocking for him, not just having receivers for him to throw to, but also through the media, publicly, comments, confidence. It all adds up to being a franchise quarterback, and the Broncos are finally getting on board with that.
That's right, and they're finally out of the QB desert, man. No more wandering.
Finally.
The manna from heaven has been provided, and it's all about building that nest. And we still got, obviously, a lot we want to get to tonight. We want to welcome in everybody who's been hanging out in the room. Duke Rose, what's up? Vitrone, John, Noble Young, Eric, Chase. Good to see you guys. Sterling, Cody, Juice. Thanks for joining us. We got a lot more we want to get to. First, just a couple of quick matters of business. You guys, make sure you are following the show on Twitter at HuddleUpPod. Simply the best way for you to keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening with the show in real time. And then you're also going to want to make sure you are following Mile High Huddle on Twitter. As simple as you see right here on your screen, at Mile High Huddle. That keeps you plugged in to all things Broncos, breaking news as it comes in real time, plus, all the analysis and insight that comes with our site breaking down your Denver Broncos on the daily. So take care of that business. And then don't forget, you guys, head on over when you get some time. You demanded it. We got it up there. Check out the merch store. You guys have been phenomenal so far in your support on the merch store. You got this hat like Zach's wearing now. You got shirts. You got hoodies. Some good stuff. And then we're constantly adding to that. So when you get some time, and I'll put the link in the comment stream so you guys can go check it out when you get a second. But just another simple, easy, organic way for you to support not only the Huddle Up podcast, but also Mile High Huddle. So check that out. All right, Zach, we got a few questions in the super chat coming in. I want to get to that here in just one second. First, we got an answer to 3 questions that we did not know the answer to, leading up to, I should say, the Combine. First and foremost, no surprise, but we didn't have it for sure on this. The Broncos are not going to pick up Ron Leary's team option. So cutting bait with Leary. That saves them $8.5 million on this year's cap, Zach, which moves the needle from the $62 million that they had. Add 8 to that. Now they're sitting at 7, or I should say 70, excuse me. One more move, no brainer. Once they get resolution on Joe Flacco, now you're at 80. So Ron Leary gone. And then the team is, to some fans' disappointment, they're going to hold on to Todd Davis for this contract year. They're picking up his team option. And then also Brandon McManus.
Byron Jones, come on down. The Broncos are continuing to clear up cap room, and they can definitely afford, we've been saying it, Chad, for the last couple months, they can afford whoever they want if they choose to splurge through free agency. And if there's one player like we've been mentioning, it is Byron Jones who's worthy of that money. I'm not so sure that Todd Davis is a guaranteed return, though. I've read somewhere that his contract, there's no more guarantees or something like that. The Broncos get off the hook of his contract if they want to release him, if they want to, move on. They're going to still look for an upgrade, though. So Todd Davis isn't a surety, but yeah, Ronald Leary, that was a no-brainer. They're going to look to have another guard starting there, maybe even a center too if McGovern walks in free agency, but plenty of cap space, Chad. I think Broncos can do what they want financially.
Guys, anyone who wants to support the show, we're never going to ask you to donate money to the show. If you want to do that, you want to become a Super Chat superstar, you do it on YouTube. As you're watching, there's the comment stream. You'll see a little button that has, I think, like the $sign on it, if I'm not mistaken. You click that, and it allows you, as long as you have your Google Wallet set up or whatever, and it's connected to your accounts, it allows you to do that if you want to. Speaking of which, Zach, Ariel jumping in, one of our super chat superstars.
Thank you, Ariel.
With a $5 donation. We appreciate you, Ariel.
Yes, thank you.
I'm all in on Drew Lock. He is our QB. We've all waited so long for that man under center to score points and take us to the Super Bowl. Drew's got it. Speaking of which, as Elway said, and again, thanks, Ariel, the it factor. Zach, what does that mean to you as it relates to the quarterback position? When someone says Drew Lock's got the it factor, what does that mean to you?
It's everything intangible to me, Chad. Any quarterback can have a strong arm. Any quarterback can run fast, but it's those things that don't show up in the stat sheet. It's those things that lift a quarterback from being a good quarterback to being a great quarterback to being an all-time quarterback. It's leadership, it's personality, it's passion for the game, it's grinding day in and day out. It's just having that alphaness that Drew Lock possesses that the Broncos haven't had under center since Peyton Manning. To me, it's just everything you can't hold, but you can just feel almost tangibly in coming out in your quarterback.
Ben says, that was honestly the most glowing endorsement of Lock from Elway that I've seen since the end of the season. Much better than the I don't see any other options. Ben, you took the words right out of my mouth. In fact, that's exactly, I quoted Elway in the article that I had at milehighhuddle.com today. And when you guys get some time, go check that out. And it was just a lukewarm way to communicate. It's almost like we don't have any other choice. He was so good, but we don't really want to say that he was so good, and we don't want to. Why leave anything open to interpretation? And it's been made clear to me, and it was made clear to me actually day of that presser that no, he didn't. That's not what he meant. It came out wrong. What he's trying to say is Locke was so good, we don't have any other option of saying anything but he's our guy. Like, well, that's just a really convoluted way to say that, dude. It makes it sound like, do I want to go out on a date with you tonight? I don't see any other options. So I guess so. It's like how lukewarm. And again, if you leave it up to any room for interpretation, you didn't do a good job as the front office czar of this team to enunciate, to specify, to be as clear as possible and communicate to media and fans, because media is the gateway to the fans, right, what you feel about Drew Lock.
You know what we were saying last year, Chad, that the Broncos have to relearn how to win? Well, Elway has to relearn what it's like operating the football team, having a franchise quarterback. He hasn't experienced that since Manning, and he doesn't really know. He's never finished a season where he's optimistic about the quarterback for that following year. In fact, he's never really had a season where he has a surefire starter that's the same guy from the previous year. So he's relearning how to treat this organization, how to run his job by having that young franchise talent under center. So now he's starting to say the right things. It's part of the reason why they shook up the coaching staff after the season, Chad. Everything he says and does is revolving around Drew Lock, and that's absolutely how it should be.
Vitrone, homie, I hope you're still with us, dog. Listen, here's how it works for Zach and I. We're juggling a lot of things, right, as it relates to cranking out content, covering your team. And, we say 6 p.m. Mountain. We have a little bit of a window, a little bit of a buffer time. And a lot of times if we ever are running late on it, it's because it's a big news day or something just broke right before the podcast, and we have to take care of that first before we can go live and spend time talking to you guys. It's just the way it works. Now, Brian, and thanks for your patience, guys, by the way, when we're not right on the money and as punctual as we would prefer to be in a perfect world, you guys show that patience. You stick with us. We do appreciate you. Yep. Brian says, I'm a first-time listener, and I have a question for Chad and Zach. Do you think the Broncos get Byron Jones and Darius Slay, and is it possible to get Jalen Reagor from the NFL draft? Do I think the Broncos get Jones and Slay? No, Zach, it's either or, in my opinion. If it happens, Byron Jones, even though he's looking at a max contract, to me is the more likely of the two to end up in the orange and blue. And Jalen Reagor, yes, absolutely, he's in the conversation. It wouldn't surprise me if he were the pick at 15. I don't think he'll be there when they circle back around in round 2.
All three on its face are realistic to some extent, Chad, for the Broncos, but not Slay and Jones. Like you just said, it's one or the other. They're not going to give up a draft pick and 2 massive contracts for 2 cornerbacks. It's really one or the other, and we all have our preferences. I prefer Byron Jones to Darius Slay, but there's for sure a chance Reagor could be the pick with a solid combine, a solid pre-draft process showing he could be the guy at 15.
Machiavelli, the GOAT, is in the house, jumps in on Super Chat.
Thank you.
And by the way, Machiavelli, before we get to this, thank you for your donation. I'm glad you're here. When you get some time, email us, milehighhuddle@gmail.com. Yeah. We want to get your personal deets so that we can send you out a thank you. We didn't get to that the last time we saw you live on the show, and you set the new record, which has since been broken. by I think it was Steven, right? Didn't Steve
Mhm.
Baumgartner break it? Anyway, but either way, you're up there, and we appreciate you. And reach out to us after the show or when you get some time. We want to send you a little thank you. Let us know what your T-shirt/hoodie size is along the way. He says 90-minute phone conversation with Peyton freaking Manning. It's so on, ladies and gentlemen. Get ready. Now, I'm glad you brought that up, Machiavelli, because Brandon Stokely of 104.3 The Fan, of course, a former teammate of Peyton Manning's at 2 different NFL stops and still a close friend of Peyton Manning's, reported on Twitter today, early on Wednesday, that he was told by Peyton, of course, that they spent about 90 minutes together on the phone, did Peyton and Drew Lock, going over, when to start throwing, film study habits during the offseason, like when to start getting the receivers together to start throwing. Really encouraging stuff. If you can have Peyton Manning as your sounding board as a young quarterback going into just your second year, you're getting off on the right foot.
Sorry, Chad. I just took a swig of water and choked there.
Happens.
Yeah. The beauty of live podcasting. But yeah, it's definitely encouraging that it's that long rumored Lock Manning relationship is starting to take hold, and I just love the fact that he's making that effort, Drew Lock, to pick Peyton Manning's brain. An hour and a half on the phone might not seem like a lot, but for someone like Peyton Manning, every minute is valuable. He's a very busy guy, a lot to do. So I love the fact that he's connecting with them, and it's an elite to good things, I think, on the field.
Absolutely. James Dean jumps in with a donation on Super Chat.
Thank you,
James. Just want to say hi, guys. Always enjoy the show. We always enjoy having you, so appreciate you. And this, comments like this, is what makes us get up in the morning and attack this thing with the work ethic and passion that we have. Thank you for saying that. That means a lot, by the way, for those listening to this after the fact. Worm for Mayor Gaming on YouTube. Love the show. Keep up the awesome work. I watch every show. You guys are my football priests.
Wow.
So you could say I watch religiously.
Thank you.
There's a T-shirt idea. There's a T-shirt idea somewhere in that comment. Appreciate you. Hunter jumps in on Super Chat with a $5 donation. Thank you so much, Hunter. Orange hat up on the site now. Big day for the Combine tomorrow. Excited. That's right, Hunter. We did say we were going to get an orange hat up. Hasn't happened yet. Here's my promise to you. We'll have an orange hat up on the site by Sunday night show. Okay, that's my promise to you. We'll get that done. All right, and Jake on Facebook.
And a tank top as well.
That's right, and the tank top. That's right. On Facebook, Jake says, hello from Wisconsin. See, you guys, this is what I mean about Broncos country is not a physical location. It's not a geographic location. It is a state of being.
That's right.
After picking up Davis's option, do you guys think the team still needs help at inside linebacker? Yes, absolutely. Because look, the Broncos have 3 really good run fit, 2-down thumping caliber linebackers, Davis, Alexander Johnson, and Josie Jewell. What they're missing is a badly needed infusion of athletic ability and kind of speed and coverage wherewithal at the linebacker level. And that's just the missing ingredient that they really need to help take Fangio's defense, Zach, to that next level. So whether that comes via the draft, whether that ends up coming via free agency, only time will tell.
Yeah, like we were just saying about the Todd Davis question earlier, even if they bring him back, they're going to look to upgrade that position, whether it's a guy like Corey Littleton in free agency or Joe Sherbert in free agency. Someone like that could be a plug-and-play starter for Denver. It's just how much they want to invest and how much money they want to spend, if any, in free agency. The Broncos showed last year they're not going to put an overarching emphasis to invest at that position, but they do need someone that can run sideline to sideline. I'm excited to see who they will pair, though, with A.J. Johnson in the middle. That's an exciting young nucleus in the middle of your front seven, Chad.
Here's a funny point from Charlie Beagle. I don't know if I'd want to call myself a priest these days.
True. Football priest, though.
The way it came to be, the way that kind of became a phrase and then it kind of caught fire with our awesome listeners is just something we used to say that led up to every mailbag, that we are your football priests. We're here to offer you the absolution and answers to your burning Broncos questions. I've said it so many times now I have it memorized, right? And then it just turned into a thing. Restoration Farm on YouTube. What are the chances Henry Ruggs falls to the Broncos at 15? I think it's the best case scenario is 50-50 odds. Yeah. He wants to break the record at the Combine, Zach, and I don't know, you factor in those 10 1/8 inch hands and just his ability as a wideout. No one would have thought this in November of last year, this last fall, but he is probably going to go before Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah, I was going to say he could be the number one receiver taken in this draft, a top 10 pick. He might not even fall out of the top 10, let alone to 15. So if he's on the board, there's a strong possibility the Broncos will draft him. I would say there's a 70% chance wide receiver will be the pick in round 1, Chad, and a 100% chance of the Broncos taking a wide receiver within the first 3 rounds.
Jared, listening from the shower, jumps in on Super Chat. Appreciate you, Jared.
That's devotion right there.
And supporting the show from the shower. You are the man.
Appreciate
Love y'all
you,
show.
yes.
Go Broncos all the way. See, in Arkansas. That's what we're talking about here.
Broncos
Appreciate
country is the best.
Sleek Cho on YouTube. Do you think we could hit 100 million in cap space? Love this podcast. Thanks, Sleek Cho. Could we? Yeah, but you would really have to start cutting. And I mean, you would have to not only get rid of Flacco, that gets you to 80, but you still got 20 million to go. That would probably mean you didn't pick up Todd Davis's option. You probably cut Jeff Hireman. I mean, you'd have to really get creative to get to that 100 million mark. So yeah. I think best case scenario is somewhere between 80 and 85, but just plan on about 80, which is still, you guys, a ridiculous amount of cap space. John Elway is going to be a big time player in this free agency period.
Yeah, to get to 100, they pretty much have to gut their roster, and it makes no sense cutting players for the sake of having just that big total of cap space. They have as much right now as they've had in years combined even, and they can do what they want with who they want in free agency. They can re-sign their own. They can splurge on a couple of outside players. They really hold all the cards monetarily wise. They don't have to get to 100. Like one comment just said, Top Nation 11 said 80 million is just fine. Absolutely. It's more than enough. The Broncos are sitting very, very pretty right now.
Here's a question from Awesome One 1102 Broncos. What do you guys excuse me? What do you guys think if the 49ers release Marquise Goodwin? Do you think the Broncos should sign him to a 1-year, $6 million deal? What do you think of that? You know, I wouldn't hate it. He's one of those kind of low-key options if that's how it shakes out that the Broncos could look to bring in. Eric Trickle's got an article coming up here. I think tomorrow it's going to come out with a video, and so it'll end up on YouTube as well. You guys can check that out. That is 5 kind of under the radar, no-brainer options for the Broncos. And guys like Paul Richardson, you know, come to mind. That's kind of what I would consider for with Goodwin in that same level, Zach, of, you know, not necessarily like you expect the type of impact Emmanuel Sanders had when he arrived in 2014, but a guy who can help you stretch the field nonetheless.
Maybe this is an unpopular opinion, Chad, but I don't want any veteran receiver in this free agent class. I'd rather the Broncos devote that entirely to the draft class. They can get their speedster long-term wide receiver 2 at 15 or wherever in the first or second round. They can add another one in the middle rounds for just insurance purposes. I wouldn't want to spend any money on any sort of wide receiver who's not what the Broncos need for their long-term. Marquise Goodwin is not the long-term answer at wide receiver 2. Paul Richardson wouldn't be either. Amari Cooper, even if the Broncos considered him, he doesn't fit what they need. He's not a pure speedster. I want the guy through the draft. I want the Broncos to build internally and pair that young talent with Drew Lock.
Chris Clark on YouTube. Any news on Javon Kinlaw's injury? Would love to have him. Glad I can finally see the live pod. Keep up the great work.
Thank you, Chris.
Well, thanks for joining us. We appreciate you. Glad you could make it as well. The news on his knee is that it looks good. It passed muster from what I've been told. It was good feedback from the medicals on Kinlaw's knee, which all but cement him as probably a top 10 pick, Zach.
Yeah, if everything checks out and he hangs, you know, true to this pre-draft process, he's probably going to go within the first 12 picks, and the Broncos might not get a shot at him at all. But if he is healthy, though, and if he does fall, it's just another option for Denver, wherever they're picking in the first round. All
right, let me jump down here to our good friend Terry Randall up in Canada with the old reliable hashtag state of being. You're the one that exemplifies that, Terry. $10 donation on
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you so much. Chad and Zach rocking the dope swag. What chance is there for us, or what chance is there for as many as 5 quarterbacks taken before 15? The board would be wide open for us. I think it's slim to no possible chance that 5 go in the top 15. I think here's who you can count on: Burrow, Herbert, Tua. Those are the 3 you can count on going before the Broncos pick. And that's going to help, but it's probably not going to be enough to just give Denver the pick of the litter at 15. Like, they are going to have to, you know, they might not get the number 1 or 2 guys they had their heart set on, but they're still going to get, Zach, even if it ends up being a wide receiver, a blue chip caliber guy.
I'm right there with you. I think 3 quarterbacks, those 3 that you mentioned, Chad, will go in the first round. If they go within the first 15 picks, it just pushes a Broncos prospect further down the board and maybe even to the Broncos' lap. So I'm right there with you. No way 5. I do see 3 as well.
Jeremy on Facebook, cool picture, by the way. Was that from this year's game, I wonder, on your profile in Minnesota? I know it's a deep wide receiver class, legendary even, but if Judy or Lamb, CeeDee Lamb of Oklahoma, fall to pick 10, do you consider trading up? I mean, it's worth it. You consider it. You make a phone call. If they're one of your top guys, you make the phone call and see what it would take. I wouldn't give up anything more than a 3rd rounder to go from 15 to 10, but it would probably, Zach, cost more than that.
Yeah, it would depend on if the Broncos fall in love with one of these 2 guys in the pre-draft process, Chad. If they think those guys are must-haves, if they think those 2 receivers are better than a Henry Ruggs or better than a Rager, better than a Chenault, then yeah, kick them a 3rd round pick and get your guy. But depending how the board breaks, they might have to trade anything and still have a receiver fall into their laps. That's how I think the Broncos should maneuver that, considering the quality of receiver in the top half of this draft.
Cartoon, 777s. Simeon had want to, but not a lot of natural ability. Lynch, lots of ability, but very little want to. Locke has both talent and want to. He's going to be a good quarterback. That's one of the things that, and before actually I respond to that, no, I'll respond first. That you love about Locke is he's got the physical traits in the arm, athleticism, elite arm talent, can make all the throws, just enough kind of different platforms, as Elway talked about in that quote I read earlier in the show. All the physical traits, he checks each and every box. There's prototypical stud across the board physically. As Elway said, what you never know is what do they have between the ears? Do they have the it factor? I'm not going to say anything more on it because Zach, I think, did a great job explaining what the it factor means, but it just boils down to the intangibles. And as you elucidate there, Cartoon, 777s, those were many of the traits that Paxton Lynch, despite being a 1st round pick, just simply did not have. And here's one other thing, Zach, and I'll serve it over to you. From Brian on YouTube, he says, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Locke looked good in 5 games, but some people are already making a spot for him in Canton, Ohio. I remember someone else who looked good in their first 5 games, Brock Osweiler. I can't say that. It's a family show, Brian. You know that. Your response to that notion, Zach?
It's still early, and yeah, I'm not ready to say he's the next quarterback, the next Super Bowl MVP, or the next Hall of Famer, even the guy for the next 10 years. But he's certainly the most promising young quarterback the Broncos have had in the last half decade. He has every potential, and he checks every single box, every physical trait, non-physical trait, all the intangibles. He put it together on the field. He showed what he's capable of. He already separated himself from Paxton Lynch. From day one, he just had that work ethic. He had that, I guess you can call it an it factor. You really just can't name it anything otherwise. It's just you have it. You see it. He passes the eye test. He passes that intuition test that you just look at a quarterback and you think, wow, he's going to be a good one. That's what you feel with Drew Lock. I never saw that with Osweiler. I never saw that with Paxton Lynch. I never saw that with Trevor Siemian. That's what Drew Lock brings to the table, and that's why he's the most promising guy compared to the rest.
Amen. Mark jumps in on Super Chat, $5 donation, one of our Super Chat superstars. A mile-high salute to you, my friend. And by the way, I received the email today from our fulfillment service that's shipping you out that swag. So it's on the way. I'm thinking good chance you have it by Friday, Mark. So look for that in the mail. What's up, my guys? Henry Ruggs running the 40. Will he beat the record? Thoughts? Zach Perna lights up every time. Miss Christie donates. I'm not sure what the last thing is there, but we miss Christy too. She always contributes to the show,
yes.
Conversation in the stream. And so, maybe she'll be here for the Mile High Mailbag tomorrow night. We'll see. But Mark, thanks for your support, my dog. And Henry Ruggs running the 40. I think there's a good chance he does beat the record, Zach.
That's going to be must-see TV, Chad, because I think he's fully capable of doing it. And if he does, he would pretty much cement himself to being a top 10 pick. So it's going to be interesting to see what he puts up there.
TG jumping in and reminding everybody who owns the record now. That's right. My bad, TG. Thank you for setting us straight on that. Absolutely. And thank you for the donation.
Yeah.
Thank you for the donation. We love you. And have we heard from TG on email?
If you haven't, be sure to send us one, TG. We'll get some stuff sent out to you.
milehighhuddle@gmail.com. Let's get your deets. And so we can send you a little thank you for supporting the show the way you do. Larry over on Facebook. Good question here. Is there any way we acquire A.J. Bouye via trade, or if Jacksonville cuts him? It doesn't appear at this point that they're going to cut him. And maybe that's just because they're holding out hope that they can trade him. But if I doubt they end up making a trade for him, to be honest with you. But if Jacksonville cuts him, Denver would be one of his top suitors. I could guarantee you that.
Yeah, I wouldn't trade a pick for him. I would definitely consider signing him if he hits the open market. But Broncos can have him and Byron Jones if he gets cut. The Broncos can sign 2 cornerbacks. It doesn't have to be one or the other this offseason. I prefer Prince Amukamara and Byron Jones, but if Bouye gets cut, he's for sure a possibility.
Jody, how can either of you think a wide receiver at 15 is the smart pick? Well, Jody, I don't know how much of the show you've been watching the last 6 weeks, but we are of the opinion, look, we're not going to shed any tears if it ends up being a wide receiver at pick 15. We're not going to castigate the team and say, oh, you screwed up. That was the wrong decision. What we're saying, though, is that with this being such a deep class and the Broncos having as many needs as they do across the board, both sides of the ball, you can afford to wait on wide receiver in round 1 and still probably get a really good player, whether that's a Denzel Mims, a Jalen Reagor, T. Higgins. There are going to be some options in round 2 that immediately upgrade your offense and allows you at pick 15 to get a blue chip guy, whether it's Tristan Wirfs, offensive tackle, a corner. Jeff Gladney at TCU is building up some momentum as a really good Broncos fit. Don't sleep on him being a possibility. So that's how we feel about the situation.
I'm not saying it's the smartest pick, but let's assume the Broncos, they go on the clock and all their offensive line candidate prospects are gone. All their defensive prospects are gone, but Henry Ruggs or Jerry Jeudy or CeeDee Lamb staring them in the face. And if they pass on him, that's not a smart pick. They have to take the guy. They still have to supplement Drew Lock. They still need that guy. So it comes down to how their board breaks. I wouldn't say he's a better pick, one of those receivers over Tristan Wirfs necessarily, but it's depending on how the board falls at 15. They can't just pass on a wide receiver because of previous history or previous notions surrounding wide receiver. They still have to find that guy. So it all depends. We don't know for now, but how the board will break out in April.
Evan on YouTube says, hey guys, you are all awesome. Seriously love watching every show, from this to Building the Broncos live show to Dove Valley Deep Divers. You guys are all awesome. Thank you all for what you do.
Thank you, Evan.
And I know you have supported the show, multiple shows. Let's say you've supported Mile High Huddle, the channel on YouTube, on Super Chat. So we appreciate you, dog. Gio Vandermark with a $10 donation on Super Chat.
Thank you, Gio.
Oh, thanks, dude. He's selling it for us, Zach. Receive my shirt quickly. Awesome quality shirt. We'll buy more goodies. Gio, we appreciate you, dog. And
5-star review.
We're trying to keep that thing as updated as we can in real time with new products. It's coming. And if you guys haven't been on there for a few days, go check it out. There is some additional options there. Glenn on Facebook, is Alec Ogletree that type of linebacker that we've talked about as being that infusion of athleticism? He is a really athletic linebacker, but I just don't think, I'd have to look at his PFF grades and coverage the last couple of years to answer this, and I haven't done that yet. The news breaking, of course, today that the Giants are parting ways with him. He could be. I think he checks one of those boxes anyway, possibly of at least having athleticism, but I've been really disappointed in him the last couple of years. He hasn't really impressed me much.
Right. I was going to say he's that type of linebacker in 2017, but for 2020, no. I mean, the Broncos can look at Corey Littleton, they can look at Schobert. There's other options on the free agent market than settling for Alec Ogletree, who was cut from one of the most defensive deficient teams at the NFL. You never want to pick up those scrap pieces.
Ron W. Ron, you got a shirt coming your way. We got your details, and Zach's going to be putting a shirt in the mail for you if he hasn't already. So we appreciate your support. Jumping in on Super Chat, $10 donation. As a bona fide Super Chat superstar, he says, I wish Elway would stop with these QB retreads. I don't want Brady, period. I like veterans on the defense to easily pick up Fangio's scheme, but more young players on offense for Locke's development. And you know what, Ron? I think you're going to get your wish. I mean, when it's all said and done, I like the verbiage that friend of the show, Benjamin Albright, has used on Twitter, that the Broncos are going to buy their defense in free agency and build their offense through the draft.
We don't have to worry about Brady or any other veteran. No matter what John Elway is saying, he knows where his bread is buttered going forward from 2020 and beyond, and that is Drew Lock. They're not going to bring in, and you're not going to even come close to flirting with Tom Brady, let alone signing him. They're not going to bring in any type of notable backup. If they bring in a veteran, Chad, it'll be a really nondescript, mid-tier guy who can come in and start a few games. That's even if they do that. But this is Drew Lock's team, and one of the biggest perks about having a franchise quarterback is no more of these quarterback carousels. No more of these narratives, no more of these competitions. You have a young guy and it's his team. It's so exciting.
Chase Wellner jumps in on Super Chat. Appreciate you, Chase.
Thank you, Chase.
Any free agent backup quarterbacks that you like for the Broncos? Honestly, after listening to Vic Fangio talk, Zach, on Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. local time, it sounds like the team is thinking, you know what, let's not go crazy on bringing in an outside backup like Brandon Allen and, as he calls him, Brett Rippon. Let's just let them compete this summer and let the chips fall. Maybe bring in a late-round quarterback or a college free agent to kind of serve as that camp arm. You never know what you're going to find. We can pull it up on Spot Track. Do you got anyone you're thinking, Zach?
I was thinking maybe Chase Daniel, but he's going to probably get a lucrative contract elsewhere. I mean, I think they're good, right? I've been advocating for Brandon Allen to be that guy. He has experience. He is technically a veteran. He's familiar with the Broncos. He showed last year he can win a game in a spot start. I don't know why they just don't roll with him. He's going to take up no cap space pretty much. He's going to not take away any narratives. He's not going to take away any buzz or headlines from Drew Lock. I just think that's the natural guy to step in there as your number 2.
Let's just take a quick gander at it on Spot Track, which is a very helpful resource in getting an idea of what the free agent class is going to look like. I'll do a share screen with you guys real quick. We can take a peek. I think it's worth a quick aside to look at these free agent quarterbacks. And as it goes over, Zach, can you make that out at all?
I can, if I squint, I can make it out.
All right. Well, hopefully you guys, if you're holding on to your phones and you're watching this on your phones, you can see this. I'll go ahead and read them for those listening. And if you can't quite make it out, as far as free agents, unrestricted, we get past the first few big names. Probably the first option that comes to mind, which to me is not a good option, but it's an option nonetheless, Marcus Mariota. Chase Daniel is an unrestricted free agent. So, don't sleep on him being a possibility. He is a former Mizzou quarterback. So he and Drew Lock could have that, that brotherhood. You get to Case Keenum as a guy that I think makes a lot of sense. So I know Zach doesn't like it. It makes sense to me, but I doubt that's a bridge that the Broncos want to cross again. You got your Drew Stantons of the world. You got your Colt McCoys, A.J. McCarron. There are some options. Even old Trevor Siemian coming off a gnarly injury. There's some options there, but again, nothing that screams got to have as the fail-safe backup, Zach, to Drew Lock.
This is a really sad list, Chad. Isn't it just a bunch of failed dreams there and failed hopes, failed draft picks? I mean, I don't want any of them associating with the Broncos. I mean, we can differentiate on our opinions about Case Keenum, but if they need a quarterback, they have Brandon Allen, they can draft one. I would not dip my toe into that pool, Chad. Certainly not for Marcus Mariota. That's one guy I don't want in the least.
James Dean jumping back in on Super Chat. Colorado native, 719, now in Tulsa, Oklahoma, representing. That's awesome, dude. Hashtag state of being. All right, let's see what else you guys got here. William from Bills Mafia Country says, love the show, guys. I reside in Bills Mafia Country, and it's so nice to get Broncos updates daily. Keep up the great work.
Thank you, William.
Yeah, well, that means a ton to us.
Go break a table for us.
Hey, guys, looks like Ron Leary is gone, so how are we going to fill the gap? Do you think by draft or free agency? One thing, we haven't talked about this yet. There's a lot from Elway, especially his remarks, and Fangio, that we probably aren't going to get a chance to completely, talk about tonight. But one of them that we should, especially in the wake of that question, is the fact that John Elway did express an interest in talking to Connor McGovern about coming back. So I still am of the opinion that he's going to find a pretty bullish market. I think he's going to find that $7 to $10 million a year, and the Broncos aren't going to want to pay him that. But you never know because, again, they have a ridiculous amount of cap space this year. There are some options in the free agent market, but I think this is one of those spots that I know we say buy the defense in free agency, Zach, but that's kind of the general theme. And I don't think this necessarily runs counter to it, but I think you got to fill either whoever you want to pencil in as your starter at center or guard. You got to fill one of those positions, I think, through free agency.
And that to me is where McGovern holds dual leverage because he can play guard and center. The Broncos will need one starter at both those spots this offseason with McGovern being a free agent. So if the Broncos want him back, they're going to have to pony up to get him back. I don't know how much they like him. I agree with you. I think the Broncos to sign a veteran, even as insurance, they can still draft a guy, but there's just no one really out there that I think is worthy of investing in. I see Brandon Scherf mentioned as a comment, but he's going to want starters money, and he's another injury-prone lineman that I don't think Elway is going to pull the trigger on. He's just been burned too many times in the past with tackles and go. Even Ron Leary, that's the reason that they're cutting him because he can't stay healthy. I don't think he's going to go replace him with another injury-prone guy.
Kaimana, sorry if I mispronounced your name, my friend. Kaimana Wilson. I saw the offensive tackle Jedrick Wills say that he spoke with the Broncos. Do you think this is the Broncos just doing due diligence, or could he be a legit target in round one? Appreciate you guys. Much love from Hawaii.
Thank you.
Again, state of being, baby. No, it's legit. I mean, look at it like this, you guys. Now, some of these meetings are due diligence and some of them are legit smoke signals. But the Broncos sitting at pick 15, they don't really have a lot at stake in terms of trying to manipulate teams behind them and in front of them. Like, they're right smack in the middle. And you got hundreds of prospects that descend on the combine. Teams meet with maybe 60. I think is the limit, actually, that they can meet with at the combine formally. Now, there are a bunch of little quick asides. You're passing people in the hall. You're in the elevator together. You're at the freaking airport. I talked to several prospects last year in last year's draft, Zach. When I say, "Hey, have you talked to the Broncos yet?" Yeah, informal. I was literally waiting in line to hop in my Uber, and a guy came up and started talking to me. It turns out he was a Broncos scout. Like that kind of thing is what happens for these guys. But no, I don't underestimate. I think Jedrick Wills is a legit target. I just don't think he's going to be there at pick 15, Zach.
Right. Yeah, this is all legitimate right now. I mean, some is a smokescreen and some is just due diligence, but I think he would be a target, but I'm with Chad. I don't think he'll be on the board, so it's going to be immaterial when it comes down to it.
One of our Super Chat superstars, been with us for a long time. Drew Hollenbach jumps in on Super Chat with a $25
Thank you,
donation.
Drew. Appreciate you.
You're the man, Drew. He says, Chad, I saw your article a few days ago regarding Chicago's free agents. I prefer to build through the draft for almost everything, but I do really like Taylor Gabriel. We need a burner outside. He could be a good option. Thank you for reminding me of that. We were talking about Marquise Goodwin. We were talking about Paul Richardson. Taylor Gabriel's an option. And Prince Amukamara, I mean, nothing is a lock in free agency, but I could see him, even if you let Chris Harris go. And by the way, John Elway said, look, there's still a lot of time left between now and when free agency opens. I want to talk to Chris Harris Jr. I want to talk to Derek Wolfe. I want to talk to Shelby Harris. But either way, even if Chris Harris goes, you got Bryce Callahan, you got Devontae Bosby, you got Isaac Yadam, you've got Devontae Harris, you got Duke Dawson. But the top two guys are Bryce Callahan and Devontae Bosby. You could maybe live with, if Callahan ends up coming back, as they hope he will, as far as health-wise and availability-wise, you could maybe get by with those two plus Prince Amukamara as your number two if you absolutely had to.
Well, the good thing about Amukamara, too, is you can sign him now. You don't have to wait until March 16th because he was cut by his former team. So the Broncos can get him into the building now and still devise their plan for Byron Jones or the draft or whoever. But I think the Broncos need two starting caliber corners this offseason, Chad, assuming they lose Chris Harris Jr., whether that's Amukamara and Byron Jones, whether that's Darius Slay and Amukamara. That's the guy from Chicago that I want, though. I'm not big on Taylor Gabriel. I would take Amukamara, though.
Trevor Judge, a Mile High Huddle writer, jumps in. He says, spot on, Zach. Pass on this year's free agency class of wide receivers. And by the way, guys, follow Trevor Judge on Twitter at Trevor Judge. Yes. Very knowledgeable and talented football analyst. Check him out. All right, there's a couple more, and then we got to get out of here for tonight, guys. If there's anyone's questions we didn't get today, save them, because tomorrow night is the Mile High Mailbag. That's all about you guys, and we'll get to as many as is humanly possible for us tomorrow night. Let's see here. This is interesting from Norsate Udakarn on YouTube.
Tyler.
Sorry if I butchered your name.
Wow.
My favorite time of day to listen from you guys among talking about coronavirus news here in Asia. Let's go Broncos from Thailand.
Wow.
It's a worldwide fan base. It's a worldwide community, and you're proving that. We appreciate you.
And stay safe. That virus is no joke.
Yes. But there is an article I suggest people check out that's out there if you're tripping a little bit on coronavirus coming and, infecting you and your family. There's an article, if you Google 7 things about coronavirus you should know. One really quick little aside, I don't mean to derail this podcast. I'm not a medical expert. Don't take this as advice, but it does say that type A flu has a 0.1% mortality rate, and that's pretty gnarly. Because type A flu can be very deadly, but then you go 0.1%. Wow, coronavirus 2%. So it's many times magnitude-wise of mortality rate, but still that means that 2%. If 100 people come down with coronavirus, Zach, only 2 are likely to become, to die from it. It's still very scary.
Yes.
But don't get too caught up in the panic. All right, moving on here. We got to grab these super chats, guys, and then we are going to have to get out of here for tonight. From Joe Turner on YouTube, jumping in super chat. Huddle Up Podcast Pros, as always, thumbs up. Hey, Kelberman, get on board with Wolf coming back. That's a guy you want to go to war with. Joe, thanks for the donation. That means a ton to us. Have Zach's opinion on Wolf has evolved somewhat the farther we've gotten into the offseason.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm kind of warming on Derek Wolfe returning. I'm not slamming the door. I'm not saying stay away. He's worthy of coming back. He's worthy of a new contract. He looked good last year. I can't deny that. I just would want the Broncos to protect themselves in case he gets injured again if they resign him.
Yeah, and in case you missed this from over the weekend, we reported this, that it is expected. We reported. We weren't the source of the report. It was from Benjamin Albright, Tony Pauline of Pro Football Network, that the Broncos do expect to get Derek Wolfe re-signed and do expect Shelby Harris probably going to sign elsewhere. And Black Knight's good to have you. Cold in Missouri. It can get cold there, man. That's for sure. All right. Bear with me 1 second here, guys. So many questions. I'm running out of time. We will circle back to all these questions tomorrow, guys. So keep them. If we didn't grab them today, again, keep them as a feather in your cap. We'll get to them. Eclipse Stormborn, one of our longtime listeners of the show, Super Chat Superstar. Philadelphia. That's right. Happy Wednesday. Shout out to my fiance, Meek, Monica. Shout out to you, Monica. She let me pull over to make a super chat. Going to hit the merch store soon. You better put her. I'm sure you've got a ring on her finger, but you better lock her down, dog, because that is a quality woman right there. Thank you so much, Eclipse. We appreciate you.
Appreciate you both. Yes.
Mark jumping back in. Thanks, Chad and Zach. You are the best.
You are the best, Mark. Thank you.
Hey, and when you get your swag, dude, you better be changing this. It's a very, don't get me wrong, dude. That's a really cool profile pic, but we better be seeing some of that swag in your profile pic, Mark. All right, couple more guys. Let's see if I just don't want to miss anyone who has jumped in on Super Chat. That is the worst feeling in the world. So let me make sure that 2 more here. Drew Hollenbeck jumping back in. A stud on Super Chat. Thank you, Drew.
Thank you, Drew. Wow.
D-line options. Harris is gone. Wolf is always hurt. Gotsis is unrestricted, I believe. Walker has never gotten a fair shot. Chris Jones is going to be expensive. Well, it's not a particularly deep defensive line class, but it is in free agency. There are a lot of options this year for the Broncos to restock the D-line shelves. I think you see Derek Wolfe come back, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Gotsis come back on a prove-it type of deal. He's going to have to do a prove-it deal, whether it's Denver or elsewhere, because he had knee surgery in December. So Gotsis, Wolfe, at least Gotsis, you don't love him as a starter, but first and second down, he's going to stop the run. You can count on that. You hope DeMarcus Walker takes another step forward as a complete player. Draymond Jones is going to be a stud, but he still needs a little time to marinate. So you look at the Javon Hargraves of the world. You look at the Jordan Phillips of the world. There are some guys out there that the Broncos can bring in on the relative cheap to complement Derek Wolfe, to complement the talent they already have there. Shelby Harris, though, he's going to be commanding top dollar on that market, and the Broncos are ready to let him go.
It's a 3-pronged approach for me on defensive line. You can re-sign your own guys like Shelby Harris or Derek Wolfe. It's one or the other. You can sign a guy like a DJ Reader or like a Jordan Phillips, and you can possibly draft a guy like Javon Kinlaw. So there are options there to replenish that defensive line. That's a good point that Chad made, though. Even for insurance purposes, to bring back a guy like Adam Gotsis, he'd be cheap. He knows the system. He's decent against the run, and you can go to war with him. There's options out there. I think if they're going to restock the defensive line, though, it will come primarily on the open market.
Blake Williams on the way out the door drops a $2 super chat. Thank you, Blake. Means a ton to us. All right, guys, we got time for, let me just grab 1 or 2 more questions of people that we have. Let's see, from Cartoon 777s. Now that we are closer to the draft, would either of you sacrifice a couple of those late season wins for a better draft spot? I really wouldn't, because you needed those wins to really, as Elway said, feel like you've bounced off the bottom and kind of zero in on the reality of where you stand as an organization. And you needed that. You needed that momentum that can carry you, and the energy and the positivity. So yeah, it might cost you, 4 or 5 spots in the draft, but the Broncos have 12 picks in this draft, 5 of which are in the top 100. If you can't make some hay with that, get out of the business, Zach.
Those extra few wins at the end of the season, they took the Broncos from being a joke to someone that you have to watch for the following season. Those couple wins highlighted your franchise quarterback and gave the Broncos confidence and hope that you finally have that guy. Those couple wins to ultimately reshape the course of the franchise, because it allows the Broncos to avoid that quarterback carousel and get off of those retreads, get off of those Joe Flacco's and those Case Keenums, and you finally have that young guy. I would take those couple wins all day, every day over picking 8th or 9th in the draft and going into this offseason, not knowing who your franchise quarterback is going to be, not having so much confidence around Drew Lock to be that guy, and just being in a state of disarray again at that position. So that was very important for the shape of the Broncos franchise. Normally, I would like a higher draft position, but for this year, specifically with Drew Lock, I am very happy with how it played out.
All right, guys, last one, and then I'm sorry to say we got to get out of here for tonight. From Ninja Cow 410 on YouTube, should we use 2 of our top 100 picks on offensive line if we go wide receiver, cornerback in the 1st and 2nd? Which prospects do you like? I've read about Isaiah Wilson, Ben Bredson, Ben Batch, Cushenberry, Biadasz, and others. I like Cushenberry. I like Batch as well. I like all those guys, actually. But if I had to zero in, I would say we're talking top 100. If you can, you're probably not going to get Cushenberry outside of early round 2. Like, he's Dalton Reisner, basically, of this class in terms of first-round conversation. Might end up going early in the 2nd round. We'll see how it shakes out. Biadasz, he had his last season there at Wisconsin wasn't quite as good as he had hoped. It affected his draft stock. He went from being considered like a slam dunk 1st-round pick to now, I listened to guys like Nick and Carl and Eric, and it sounded like he's probably going to end up being a 3rd-round pick. So maybe if you can get Biadasz in the 3rd round, you consider yourself lucky. You've got your starting center. That's solved, and hopefully you found a right guard in free agency.
Lucas Niang is another player I'll throw out there, the tackle, I believe, from TCU. His medical recheck at the combine came back well, but he probably will be a 1st-round draft pick, though, a fringe 1st-round pick. So the Broncos want him. They're going to have to either trade down from 15 or trade back up into the 1st round. But those are all options for Denver, and I would not be surprised at all to answer the question if 2 linemen came from the first 100 picks.
Javon Hargrave is, by the way, sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you there.
Okay.
Javon Hargrave, free agent defensive line, 5-tech caliber defensive lineman from Pittsburgh that's hitting the market. Our friend Larry, this is the last one, guys, that we for sure got to get out of here. Random question with a $5 donation. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you, Larry.
Broncos fan number 24, of course, on YouTube. Random question. With the coronavirus ordeal, do you see the NFL season being affected? You never say never. You don't know what the future holds, and we don't have a crystal ball, and neither one of us are medical doctors or, CDC analysts or anything like that. But I think even though it's scary, it really is. You start thinking about it. I doubt it. I think it would take a real, post-apocalyptic scenario to affect anything in that $12 billion per year nut that is the NFL. Like, it would have to literally be like end of times caliber. I mean, think about it. 9/11, for those of you who can think back to 2001 when the Twin Towers were hit and the Pentagon and all that, NFL kept on trucking, man. And so it would take something utterly beyond our comprehension right now, I think, for that to happen, Zach.
It would take like the Black Plague to happen again for the NFL to be out of business. And fortunately, there's enough time, I think, between now and September where they don't have to worry about that. And these things, as scary as they are, these epidemics just manage to get under control, like SARS and all that. And we're not going to devolve into medical right now, Chad, but I don't see it impacting the season in the least.
Hold on one sec, you guys. I got my dogs making noise here. That's got to do it for today's episode of Huddle Up Podcast. And what perfect timing, I guess, my dogs are going to start acting up. Make sure you're following the show on Twitter at Huddle Up Pod, simply the best way for you to stay plugged in. And then don't forget to find my partner, Zack Kelberman, on Twitter at Kelberman NFL, myself at Chad and Jensen. Again, guys, if we missed your question tonight, We will circle back, have them ready to roll. Tomorrow night is the Mile High Mailbag, and we will look forward to tackling each and every question that we can, and look forward to talking to you guys then. We'll see how things shake out at the combine between now and then. But Zach, have a good night, bro.
You too. See you tomorrow, Chad. Everyone else, have a good night.
Have a good night, and big shout out and Mile High salute to our Super Chat superstars. We will tag you if we know what your Twitter handle is. We will tag you from the Huddle Up podcast. And then if not, even if we don't know your Twitter handle, we will list your name as a thank you on Twitter. For Zack Kelberman, I'm Chad Jensen. We'll see you guys tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Mountain, 8 p.m. Eastern.